And now Dan Perry, a former Europe, Africa, and Middle East editor for the Associated Press. My first question for you here, I want to jump off of something that Robert just mentioned. You know, people in Israel, he said, are skeptical, but also not surprised that we've seen this delay in the hostage release. What do you make of that?
Not the least bit surprised, much like other people in Israel. You're dealing with a terrorist group that has every interest in playing psychological games with the population here and basically driving them berserk. I do think, however, the deal will come off, basically because Hamas has every interest in returning the children and you know, the mothers and so forth and the elderly, because they realize very well that they are taking a hit. Not that the terrorist group cares that much about PR, but they know that they don't benefit that much from holding them. And what little there is of their reputation around the world is being trashed by the fact that they're holding like infants and babies of under a year. So they want to get rid of them. They want to see how much they can get in exchange. So I would expect that. I would further expect them to demand a lot more in exchange for the for men, for soldiers, and so forth. It's going to be very, very difficult for Israel. There's a lot of trepidation over what tomorrow may bring, even more than the joy at the return of a tiny handful of the hostages.
Beyond the PR, if you will, of it all, should this truce happen tomorrow as planned, how will Hamas stand to benefit?
Oh, good Lord. Look, it looks like Hamas might be able to buy a month or so or more of quiet if it just agrees to keep releasing hostages piecemeal at this drip of a rate that Israel has agreed to here. And there is furthermore a sense that after that, the international legitimacy for the war that Israel has enjoyed while memories are fresh of the you know, global historic butchery and massacre of October 7th, after the memories evaporate, and maybe are replaced in the minds of some by the even greater death toll probably that Israel has brought upon Gaza. And that is especially so because, you know, there's growing international concern over the humanitarian situation there, as your correspondent said, not just the death and destruction in the north, but the sanitary and medical conditions in the south, where you have something like 1 million displaced people. And that is not sustainable in the long term. And indifference to it is A, immoral, and B, really not a good look for anyone, and including President Biden and his political calculations as he enters an election year, I think, do factor into this. He's so far benefited from a statesman-like presentation and policy that has also prevented the Republicans from hammering him for, you know, not standing by Israel, which has become something of a Republican issue. But in an election year, this could really harm him with the progressive left that he needs to turn out a year from now, and with Muslim American voters in key swing states like Michigan. So Israel may soon face pressure to call it a day before they achieve their stated goal of removing Hamas from power. And I imagine they'll face some temptation to just sort of declare victory because Hamas is out of power in northern Gaza and leave the south alone. That could conceivably happen. And then the question is, who rules northern Gaza? And that's a whole other very difficult knot to untangle.
What happens if Hamas breaks the truce and decides to go rogue? And is that even likely here?
I would say what is likely is for for some combination of them not to have total control, and for them to play games and, you know, have plausible deniability or implausible deniability when others like Islamic Jihad start firing rockets, and they would dare Israel to, you know, because of that, cancel a deal that at the end of the day is popular in Israel, because the people, by and large, majority of the people, while this does feel like a humiliation to many of them, do want the return of the families and the youngsters and so forth.
Yeah, and so again, we know this breaking information that 13 women and children are going to be among that first group released tomorrow around 9 a.m. Eastern time. Tell us quickly here, what's happening behind the scenes right now?
Well, they're telling the families. And of course, you have, you know, the families of over 200 people, and most are not getting a note, and, you know, a handful are. There's also a lot of concern in Israel that the names not leak for fear that if the names do leak, then Hamas will not release them. Again, there's a lot of psychological stuff happening in the background. There's also internal criticism in Israel of the way it's being handled by the government. So it's just all very, very, very delicate. There's been unhappiness about the degree to which the government has been able to articulate a policy and explain why its twin goals of getting the hostages released and removing Hamas from power aren't contradictory, because some would argue that they are. And there's been almost no messaging of this, not unreasonably, because it's a delicate situation.
Yeah, as you said, an incredibly delicate and dangerous situation that we will watch unfold in the next 24 hours or so. Dan Perry, thank you so much for your insight. Appreciate it.